Oh, gotta unmute this shit.
43% of readers know whether they're going to finish a book by the end of the first chapter. So to make sure you have an excellent first chapter, we're going to do 9 stress tests. Just like a bank gets put through a stress test by the government, or your doctor puts your heart through a stress test by having you run on a treadmill, we're going to make your first chapter run through these 9 gauntlet tests to see whether they can pass them. Now, the very first one is the acceleration test.
All right. It takes me about half the book. If I can't get past the first chapter, like, I'll give you an example. Okay. So because I like The Sword of Truth so much, my friend gave me the first 3 books of The Wheel of Time. And I got 12 pages in. And I said, fuck, this is boring. And I put the book down. And that was like 5 years ago. I was just like, I can't do this, man. I guess I'm just not into this anymore. How many pages is this? Yeah, like 900. That's insane. I was just like, fuck it. I mean, I got pretty much all the way through the Dresden Files super easy. So it was like, it was not that, it was not just a giving up on that, you know?
Where does your first chapter accelerate?
I've read a 1,200 page book before, yeah. I'm a big believer in the 3 episode rule. Not sure how that translates to chapters of a book. Yeah. That could be dependent upon the length of the chapters.
Be in the beginning, it could be in the middle, it could be the end, but certainly...
what was number 1 again? The acceleration test. Acceleration test. I read the first chapter of Atlas Shrugged before dropping, but that was an absolutely monstrous chapter. Yeah.
At some point in your first chapter, the story needs to accelerate in order to hook the reader. You could do it in the very first sentence. That's what Elena Ferrante does in her novel, The Days of Abandonment. You might have seen her HBO series on the Neapolitan Quartet, and I am a huge Ferrante fan. Her first sentence says, "One April afternoon, right after lunch, my husband announced that he wanted to leave me." So that starts the book with a bang. But I do think that there is this myth in writing circles that you have to start off your book really, really quickly, like in the first paragraph. And I think that's a myth because we see great novels starting at all places in the first chapter, starting at the very end of the chapter, starting in the middle of the chapter. So don't feel this pressure like the book has to begin in your first sentence. That's not true. If you want to, it's a great option, but it's just one option among many. For an example of a novel that starts at the end of the first chapter, look at Ragtime by E.L. Doctorow. He starts with this kaleidoscopic image of all of the things going on in the United States at the beginning of the 20th century. And then after, at the very end of the chapter, we have the actual inciting incident, which is when Harry Houdini crashes his car near a boy's house and the boy's family invites him in. As long as somewhere in your first chapter accelerates...
Wait, sorry, the first part, apparently there were multiple chapters in the part, though they weren't clearly differentiated. Where it's like the chapters are separated by the 3 stars, and usually that's to symbolize like a point of view change, but some people use that as a chapter exchange as well, and they'll do it like on the same page.
Storyline, I think you're good to go. The second test is an absolute essential one. It is the anticipation test. In your first chapter, you need to give the reader something to look forward to. Give them a reason why they want to continue reading chapters. In All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony.
Okay, so we're gonna answer these. The acceleration test. What would be the fact of the acceleration test? From stable life to almost on the run. There wasn't a part where it said chapter 2. I'm sleepy. Well, you should go to bed then, book. Especially if you're going to get up early and watch Sinister's book signing stream. Something to look forward to. I guess answers for who killed Porg. Was it really Husai?
Anthony Doerr. The book starts with all these leaflets falling from the sky, and the leaflets say, urgent message to the inhabitants of this town. Depart immediately to open country. And then we learn about artillery units dropping incendiary rounds into the mouth of mortars. War is coming. We can see right from those very first early paragraphs that, like, oh, stuff is gonna go down. Or look at Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. The very first chapter shows a man in the middle of the action. He is traveling on a boat from Britain to Canada. So it doesn't start with him preparing to get on a boat, right? Not at the beginning of the journey. It doesn't start with him at the end of the journey. It starts in the middle, in the ongoing tension of the journey. That lets the reader anticipate when he's going to arrive. Now, there are also some mysteries that the reader anticipates finding out more about later. We learn that this guy is being sent into exile because of having radical views. Ooh, count my curiosity piqued. Look, as long as you can keep a reader anticipating what's going to happen, you're gonna keep them from DNFing your book. Now, this third stress test is probably the most important one for the beginning of your novel,
okay,
and it is number 3, character hook test.
All right, character hook test.
What does your reader feel about your main character by the time they end your first chapter? Because if they feel nothing, that gives them zero reason to want to continue reading. Now, it doesn't have to be love, right? It could be amusement. It could be fascination. It could be dislike, right?
I would say, questioning if Husai is a murderer. Yo, Raymond, how's it going? Welcome, welcome, good sir. Hey, Raymond, can you do me a favor, bro? You see the pinned message in the chat there? Are you following Sinister? Could you go check out Sinister's channel and go follow him? He's doing a book signing tomorrow, and if he gets 50 followers, he becomes an affiliate. He just needs, I believe, 11 more followers. We can just push him as close as we could possibly get him. If you want to be so kind, sir. Also, Raymond, if you're interested, I found this. Hell yeah, brother. Spread the love, bro. Questioning if Husai is a murderer. Why he is reacting so rashly about the Calm Pearl and the adventurers on it. I don't like writing challenges. It's not a writing challenge. It's just like a fun event to do, like, writing as a community. Yes, there's a leaderboard for it, but it's not about the leaderboard. It's more about the community aspect of writing. I don't care about the competitive aspect of it. I just thought it would be a really cool community event. No, you don't have to stream, Callie. It's just a good way to get, like, get to know other streamers. Like, if you open it up right now, I think Coffee Quills is still on. So yeah, and then it'll take you immediately to Coffee Quills' stream. And then they go for 2 hours, and then they hop to the next person. So you can just, like, hop in, get advice. There's a bunch of people. Everyone's interacting. I was chilling with a couple of them before the stream when I found out about it. So yeah, it's a really cool way to just, you know, get people together in the community and have a little bit of fun with it. So I figured I'd promote it out a little bit. And of course, yeah, there's the word count stuff, but we're not competitive. We don't care about that. It's a community gathering writing event. That's how I would look at it. I think it's a healthy way to look at it. But yeah, if you guys are interested. Because apparently they do them like once a month or something like that, so I would love to be a part of it. So if you guys either are a streamer or just a writer and you want to interact, maybe we can, figure something out for a stream for that. I think that would be really cool. Maybe do collabs. I don't know.
As long as you elicit an
what's the other thing? Why is everyone... How do I say this? How do I word this? Like, everyone being permitted... Like, everyone who leaves the 100-year quest is killed, whether they survive it or not. As proven by Torg being killed by the Monarch. Why does... no. Why is the 100-year quest so important? The answer to that question is the Emerald Weapon. At the end of the day. It's mainly about the Emerald Weapon. So just off the top of my head, that's 3 things that you can think about the character. Is like, this character is scared. He goes from being like totally chill and vibes and just like, man, I gotta write a fucking speech. Life is so hard. And then it's like, wait, what the fuck? No. What? That can't be me. That can't be. That's not me. Fuck. And it's just like, oh my god. So his reaction, because that's the one thing we don't have in the chapter when we read the chapter, is like, between each of these bouts, there's supposed to be a reflective mark back on Husai, thinking back in some sort of like paragraphal flashback of the character that was introduced in that scene that makes that scene relevant. So all of these random scenes introducing these random characters with different puzzles, different traps, and like monster encounters are, for 1, to show you, like, slowly work you into the battle system, 2, just to introduce the characters, 3, to show that it's not just battles, it's also puzzles and like locks on doors and stuff like that, like very technological kind of stuff that you would only recognize if you understood what technology was, because these people don't know what technology is, so they don't know how to classify what it is. But just from like test tubes and like wiring and stuff like that, you can clearly tell that this place is some sort of facility that's technological, and it's supposed to be a satellite, a giant satellite, like the main hub, like ISS satellite. That's basically what it is. So the scenes seem very fragmented and out of place because they don't have references back to Husai. So just kind of keep that in mind as I'm reading the chapter.
Emotional reaction of the reader, they're going to be hooked on your character. Let's look at Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabriel Zevin. What I like about the beginning of this book is it immediately creates a mystery through 4 names that the character has had. He is currently named Mazer, or at least he's known as, like, in the gaming world as Mazer. The name before that was Samson Mazer. That's what he used to go by before he got all famous. And then we learn his birth name, Samson Mazur. So he has changed his name to sound less Jewish. And then we learn his childhood name, Sam, which is what he put as his initials when he was going crazy on Donkey Kong. Just listing those 4 names tells you so much about this character and definitely makes you intrigued by who this person is. Another good example of a character hook is in Deacon King Kong by James McBride. In the beginning of this book, a church-going deacon named Cuff Lambert walks up to a drug dealer in the middle of the plaza and shoots him right in the head. And nobody knows why he did it. So all the other characters start speculating, like, why did this church-going deacon walk up to this guy and shoot him. Just having a gigantic question mark over a character's motivation is enough to entice the reader to keep reading to figure out who this person is. And the fourth stress test that you should apply to your first chapter is the 3 levels.
3 levels of curiosity. 3 levels of curiosity. I was really worried about this one, guys, but I think we're going to pass this.
Of curiosity test. What I want you to do is to go through your first chapter and list at least 3 things that your reader would be curious about.
I thought we just did that with, well, I guess it's a character hook. So, what is the 100-year quest? Why is there a dragon at the bottom? Why did Husai kill Torg? Who put the calm pearl on Husai's desk? Is this blackmail or a threat? So yeah, there's a lot of things you can
Choose
get out
3
of it.
because there doesn't really need to be 20. I mean, that's kind of overkill, but you definitely have to have more than 1. I think 3 is a nice round big number that gets your book started, but there's also enough clarity so the reader knows what's going on, but there's also enough intrigue that they want to keep reading. For an example of this, let's look at Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. We learn right away that the students are referenced as donors, and we're like, what does that mean? So basically, this is world building curiosity. We're getting introduced to a world which is different than our own, and so we're unclear of what these terms even mean. A second level of curiosity is just where all these kids are at. They're at this isolated boarding school in England, and the school seems to have very unusual rules. And then the last level of curiosity is a plot-based one. The narrator mentions something about the fate of all her classmates once all of them complete, and so we're like, ooh, that sounds a little ominous. Now, if you've read this book, you're probably like rubbing your hands right now like, I know what happens. And if you haven't read this book, I hope that those things actually make you interested to see what happens to these teenagers. The 5th stress test seems like an obvious one, but it's one that a lot of beginning writers tend to miss, so I think it's important to include. It's number 5, the story compass test.
All right. Story compass test.
The story compass just asks readers whether they know, by this, say, halfway through the first chapter, where they are, when they are, and who the main character is. Now, the pushback I constantly get from writers is they say like, oh, but I want to make it mysterious. I want my main character to start with amnesia and for them not to know where they are or when they are, anything like that. But in general,
well, you should know Husai's the main character because it keeps referring back to him, which isn't in there, but it will be. And he'll be explaining in his head and thinking about these characters. Whenever the character's introduced, Husai's like, oh my god. And there'll be like a flashback of some kind of like showing that, you know, he knows these characters in some way, right? His emotional reaction to seeing them, of like how close he was to them, you know. And it's almost like some of them are almost like a humor, like with the Torg thing, like at the beginning, like he's almost laughing because he's like, man, I remember that shit. Torg used to just go in there and just, man, it was a lot like Zaid in that way. Actually, you know what? Yeah, he reminds me a lot like Zaid. He's just that he just likes to jump into the action without asking questions. It's just the way that he is. He's naive in that. And then he'll do that with kind of like all the characters, kind of comparing them maybe to other characters. And maybe that's what we foreshadow, bringing characters in. So I hadn't written this part because I wasn't quite sure how I was going to do it. But yeah, you should know that you're in a mysterious dungeon that no one's ever beaten before. It's a video recording of the events taking place. And it's in the future, so no one ever survived and no one's seen this videotape before. So
I think that's a bad approach to mystery. You create mystery in your book not by withholding as many details as possible, but by giving those basic details and then making the reader...
And then, like, titling and the way that, like, the combat system works and stuff like that. Like, to me, that's one of the biggest things for Chapter 1.
Curious about what's going to happen next. Let's look at The Children's Crusade by Ann Packer, which has a wonderful story compass orientation. So this novel starts by telling us exactly when we are in time. We learn it's 1954. It also tells us where we are. He was on a medical ship off the coast of Korea, and now we are in Oakland, California. We also know who this is. We know this is a former soldier. We see him later on wearing his dress blues and his hair being flattened as he drives in a convertible. So please orient your reader to the basic details of your world, and then you can create mysteries on top of those.
True.
Now, the next stress test
That's
is
what
one
we're
that
doing.
not a lot of writers think about when they're writing their first chapter. It is number 6, the 4 senses test.
4 senses test.
Do you have enough sensory details in the first chapter of your book to draw the reader in? Now, why do I say the 4 senses rather than 5 senses? It's because you don't need to have taste in your first chapter. Perhaps for whatever reason, like your first chapter doesn't offer the characters an opportunity to taste something. That's completely fine. Don't try to worm taste in. It's not necessary. But you absolutely do need those other 4 senses. And the basic premise of this...
I don't think we have them in there because we know around the campfire, like, they're going to be cooking food around the campfire. So you'll have smell and taste around the campfire when they're stuck on the light puzzle. And the smell in the air is like fresh ventilated air. Like there's something that's cycling the air. So it's not stale, it's not old. It feels like there's a consistent airflow inside of this place because it's technically still online. It never turned off. It just got buried. So when it fell out of the sky. So it's like half functioning. That's why the image at the bottom is stuck on a 24-hour loop. But they'll find that out later when they actually do the 100-year quest. So like everything in the first chapter comes back around again. Because the 100-year quest satellite is super fucking important to the story. So we have taste at campfire, eating, of course, dynamite leg, right off the bat. Smell of gun. I'm happy now? Hell yeah, what did you do? Did you go work out, Callie, or did you eat? Did you take a shit? What'd you do to feel good? Smell of gunpowder. Spell catalyst. Sweat. Blood. Sound of machinery. I did most of those things. Hell yeah, Callie, that's what you gotta do. You gotta do a lot of things, right?
Stress test is, do you have enough sensory details in the first chapter of your book to make the reader feel
they were not
immersed
what
in a
made me
real
happy.
living universe?
Well, what made you happy, Callie? Something had to have made you happy.
Let's look at Jonathan Franzen's The Corrections, which I think is probably his best book. I don't know whether you remember, but this is the novel that he turned down Oprah for. He declined Oprah's book club invitation.
Seeing someone today? Oh shit, Callie, really? Oh, I'm excited for you, bro. Hell yeah, dude. That's what it's all for. Fuck yeah, Callie. I believe in you, man. You got this.
Only author ever to do that.
Just be yourself, bro.
Nobody
be
tells
yourself.
Oprah no. Nobody. So in his first chapter, and actually in the very first paragraph, we get sensory details about feeling. There is a cold front coming in. We also get sensory stuff about sight. We see the sun low in the sky. Then we get these wonderful details about sound. The drone and hiccup of a clothes dryer, and the nasal contention of a leaf blower. Love those descriptions. They're so evocative. And lastly, we get smell. We get local apples ripening, and we get the smell of gasoline. So right off the bat, the reader is immediately immersed in the sensory details of this novel. I mean, Franzen is really killing it with this first paragraph. Now, this next stress test is one that a lot of readers fret about. It is number 7, the tripart originality.
Okay. Tripart originality test.
test. Now, there are some authors that stress out way too much about originality, and if they see any similarities between their story and another, they're like, I give up. It's already been written. There's no purpose.
Every story's been written,
a mistake,
except
because
yours.
Inevitably, your story is going to overlap with other stories out there. And you actually don't want pure originality, because then people wouldn't be able to access it. It's definitely good to rely upon the trillions of stories that have come before us and build on top of those. On the other hand, there are some authors that stress way too little about originality, and their story comes off as being recycled, sort of this hackney repetition of stories that are very popular and already out there, and we don't really need like a B-rated version of them. Now, you should know for yourself which one of those you tend to fall to. I tend to fall to the too much originality side, like I really want it to be original. But here are the 3 originality questions that you need to ask your first chapter. 1, does my book too close?
Does my book too closely resemble another work of fiction? As far as I know, no, it does not. It combines a shit ton of other stuff. Is mine too much originality? No, Callie, I think yours is like mine. It's a perfect amount of originality. It's set in an original world. Like a great example of this would be like Be the Music. It's set in a very bizarre, unusual world, but all of the characters feel very human-like. Or like they're well-rounded, right? Even though they're not human, but they feel like real people, like real entities, real consciousnesses that are struggling in this very confined, very strange world. And I think that's fantastic. Now, if it had been like some weird adventure thing that was happening, like that the story was based around, I think that would be too much originality. But like, it's basically like a psychopath murder mystery with like added world building and fantasy elements. So it is pretty grounded in that aspect. Ads! Fuck ads. We'll be back. We'll be back after these ads. Ads! Fuck ads! No one likes ads! Ads are bullshit! No one likes ads! Ads are the shit! Fuck the ads! Not ads good! Bad ads! Bad ads! Bad ads! We don't want no ads. You're back already. It still says 50 seconds left on the ads. Nice job, Callie. You got the low ads. So I think the fact that your story is like a murder mystery story and like a psychopath killer story is what makes it very grounded in such a mysterious, weird world. That's where it's like my story, I think, is grounded by the fact of it's a discovery. It's like it's like an archaeological discovery in the form of fantasy. And like a rediscovering of the world. I try to make, I don't know, the novel of this person, but different. For example, make Robinson Crusoe, but with his structure. But I make it a novel about a supermarket cashier, but his experience is the same as Robinson's. It's the same novel, but about a totally different thing. Yeah, exactly. Like, look at, like, any kind of, like, lone survivor thing. Like Castaway, The Martian, something like Lord of the Flies, even. Like, I'm sure there's a couple of other ones. But following someone else's story format and placing it into either a completely different genre or a completely different area and time, and just telling that same story is basically, like, the easiest hack to making a great story. Because you're using the elements, like he said, that have already been built. You don't need to reinvent the wheel, just use the wheel and create a new creation from that wheel.
Closely resemble another work of fiction. When I read Red Sky and Morning by Paul Lynch, I'm like, this is a Blood Meridian Cormac ripoff. Like, way too much stuff was very, very close. The voice, the characters, the plot. I mean, I'm like, too much, man.
See, but I'm weird, like, you look at Final Fantasy 16 and look at Expedition 33. Or even look at, like, Final Fantasy 10, or Final Fantasy 12, or Final Fantasy 15, and Expedition 33. And so you can clearly see the inspiration, but it is its own unique story with its own unique identity. Whereas I want my story to, first and foremost, if I can, get Square Enix to sanction it off as an actual official Final Fantasy story. Otherwise, it's just like changing the names and descriptions slightly, so it's, you know, they're more like the original creatures they're based on in real life, and not the entire bestiality or bestiary of Final Fantasy. Because it's like bombs, slimes, the beastmen themselves. Like, it's all across all fantasy. But when you get, like, very specific, like a Malboro. Like, a Malboro is, like, fucking Final Fantasy. Moogles, fucking Final Fantasy, right? Even though the idea behind it is they're like fairy... They're, like, pixies. Like, fairies. Like, troublemakers. Pop into our reality, cause a little bit of havoc playfully. For example, Joyce's... Ulysses is the Odyssey, but basically recounts a day in the life of Leopold Bloom, a Jewish advertising salesman, and Stephen Dedalus, a young student and writer in Dublin, June 1904. Nice.
This is not original. Or a lot of people have complained about Powerless by Lauren Roberts, how it seems to be way too similar to Victoria Aveyard's Red Queen in terms of storyline, in terms of characters, in terms of world building. I mean, she's not writing fan fiction, but in a way this is too close to fan fiction to actually be set apart as an original work. The second originality question you need to ask yourself is,
does this too closely resemble one of my other books / stories? Not even close.
does this book too closely resemble another book that I've already written? I think about an author like Thomas Wolfe, where you can kind of have the same sentence describe multiple novels of his. You have an isolated man in a southern town who has to escape family pressures, especially his domineering mother, and then he seeks a separate identity by exploring the world. But I am aware that there are a lot of very, very famous authors who have made an entire career off of writing books that seem to have more than a family resemblance to one another. Think of the character similarities in Philip Roth's protagonists or in Haruki Murakami's protagonists. Or compare J.M. Coetzee's Waiting for the Barbarians with Disgrace. A lot of overlap. So only you can decide whether this novel is too close to something you've already accomplished and whether you're just recycling the same storyline because it feels familiar, or whether it's different enough that it could be its own novel and deserves its own space on the bookshelf. And then the third originality question is simply, have you avoided story?
Have you avoided the cliches? I think we have. Many as needed.
Cliches in the first chapter. I'm talking about an alarm clock waking the protagonist up, a description of the weather, perhaps a dream sequence, or say an info dumping backstory. The first chapter is your first chance to impress the reader and make them feel like your book is worth their time. So if you're just giving them something they've seen 1,000 times before, it's not going to pass muster. This next stress test is going to require you to be brave, but trust me, it's going to be worth it. It is number 8, the first.
You can also play with the cliches. Yeah, like we're playing with the cliche of a first person. Like, we are in first person, looking through the eyes of the main character, basically watching a video of events from the past that no one else has ever seen. And the character does not know why it's there. Who put it there? Why? And the only thought is because the inauguration is coming up, a new viceroy is accounted, and the monarch has died, so there's a new monarch now. Or, like, the monarch's father has died, essentially. Which is, like, the transition of power movement when when the monarch's father dies, the viceroy sets his son as the new viceroy, and he steps down. So at only one point in time is there ever one person above that's like an ex-viceroy or an ex-monarch. And that prevents like a bias, at least from the perspective of the people at the top. But it's more of a way for the monarch and the viceroy to swap themselves into their kids' bodies without anyone noticing, by faking their own deaths, essentially. And then having this inauguration thing to cover everything up. But there are complications with it, and that is the fact of, for a brief time, there will be someone they cannot control, either as the viceroy or as the monarch. And in this case, that's what's going to fuck everything up, because they don't have control of the viceroy, and he unleashes that he's going to let Beastmen inside of the tree, and basically, like, fucks everyone up. One of my favorite authors writes this short novel with a circular structure. The ending is so tense, and it gives us a cliche ending, almost like a chuckle. The last word is the novel's title. It's so cliche, he knows it. It almost turns the novel into a pulp-type novel. Well, it's like, the first sentence of the book is, not every battle is a challenge, and then the last sentence of the book, of the entire series, is, and then they leapt to battle. So it's very, like, full circle, but, and it's also, like, it takes a legitimately great author to make something cheesy work. Exactly, Beezus. Which is why there's so much cheese in the book. No, I'm just kidding. Welcome, Beezus. How's it going, good sir? Beezus, if you've not done so, go check out the pinned message of Sinister Kings. If you're not following him, go follow him. He's doing a book signing tomorrow, and he is, like, 11 followers away from getting affiliate. Also, Beezus, if you're interested, I found this. If you want to check it out. First paragraph, public test.
Paragraph public test. What I want you to do is to take the first paragraph of your novel and post it somewhere in an online forum. Now, it's only the first paragraph. No one's gonna steal it, right? It's not like you're giving them a whole chapter or like half the book or anything like that. It's the first paragraph. And what you want to do is you want to ask them 2 questions. 1, would you keep reading? You need to get some feedback that, like, this first paragraph is good enough that the reader's intrigued. And then 2, why would you want to keep reading?
Now, this is the perfect time for reading in between, because we actually have to change this, because this edit doesn't have the proper where is it? It's not on this edit, but it's supposed to be. Where is it? It's at the very end. Is this it? Okay, this is what it's supposed to be. Not every battle is a challenge, my poor child. The deeds you've done this day will echo in eternity. Voice of rasping hate sounding as thunder, meant to crush you beneath its heel. The figure came into view, a dark smile on its face as it unsheathed its sword and slowly drove it into Torg's heart. Go to sleep. Would you keep reading? Let's do this, guys. Let's post it. We're gonna post it on Twitter. You can't post the whole thing. Fuck. Oh, I know what to do. I know exactly what to do. Actually, let's just do it with this. Well, actually, no. Easier ways. We can just do it in Paint. We can just go Paint. And take this. We go Text. Go this. We just increase the size. This. Oh shit. There.
Reading. And this can be very.
Okay. Where is it? Did I close it? Wait, did I close it? Okay. So then we go... My beta readers finally sent me my reviews, so I gotta see if they tore me up or not. Ooh! Desktop. Stream. Alright, that should get the ball rolling.
Very useful feedback. What gets the reader interested in that first paragraph enough so that they'll read the rest of the chapter and hopefully the rest of the book? It's better to get that feedback now rather than to
no shit, you know what I guys gotta do? Dude. The comment section. I know it's a 3-month-old video, but... Shit, okay. Hold on, let me bring this back up. I am, because he said to post it somewhere. Maybe not? What do you mean, maybe not? So he said post it somewhere, so I'm going to post it in his comments. I wonder if other people have done it too. I mean, why not, right? Maybe he'll see it. And maybe he'll reply. And this will be the beginning of a great friendship. And I'll make him my editor. And I will pay him well. And I will sell great books. But why not? There's like, the worst that can happen is nothing happens. Okay, nothing happened. Right? Best case scenario, you start building a friendship. And it pops off, and people are like, holy shit, give me more! Give me more! And I'm like, alright, okay, I think we got him.
Publish the book and then get a lot of bad reviews because you didn't realize what that first chapter was doing. For an example of this, let's look at The Secret History by Donna Tartt. This is a fantastic first paragraph. It's okay to pause the video for a second so you can read it. Now, why is the reader interested here? Well,
let's see. Snow in the mountains is melting, and Bunny had been dead for... Okay, obviously that sounds like a name. It wasn't a bunny, it's a capital. So Bunny, which could also be the name of a bunny, been dead for several weeks before we came to understand the gravity of our situation. He'd be dead for 10 days before they found him, you know. It was one of the biggest manhunts in Vermont history. State troopers, the FBI, even an army helicopter. College closed, the dye factory in Hampton shut down, people coming from New Hampshire, upstate New York, as far away as Boston. Well, now you want to know who the fuck is Bunny?
Right?
Is he important?
Intrigues us a little bit. That's a mystery. 2, it seems that the narrator is implicated in some way in this death, but we don't quite know how. And then 3, the stakes are very, very high. There's this huge manhunt. It's in the press. It's getting a lot of publicity, so we know, oh, this is a huge deal. I mean, as a reader, how can you not keep reading after a first paragraph like that? And the final stress test you need to do on your first chapter is number 9, the promise test.
Promise test. Promise to finish the book.
Understand that a first chapter is kind of like a promise to the reader. You are promising them the type of conflict that's going to follow in the rest of this book. You're promising them a certain mood and a certain ambiance. You're also promising them a certain genre. You can't have your first chapter be all sciencey.
See, but that's the thing, is it's got a little bit of technology woven in, and everyone knows technology and magic together is Final Fantasy. That's like original as fuck Final Fantasy, is technological societies and magical societies clashing in some way, you know?
As if you're going to write a science fiction novel and then have magic swoop in from the outside and suddenly this becomes more of a fantasy novel. You can't start with your first chapter feeling very, very, very tight and poetic and literary and then turn into sort of a commercial pot boiler by the end of the book. For a great example of this, let's look at Cormac McCarthy's The Road. Now, this is actually a book without chapters, but I'm still using it because I feel like the first segment of this book, the first section of this book, tells us exactly what type of novel this is. Take a look at this paragraph and just ask yourself, like, what is the tone of this book? It seems pretty happy-go-lucky and light-hearted and funny, right?
Good morning,
I actually sell
Eddie!
shirts out of TeePublic, and one of my shirts is Cormac McCarthy's Comedy Club. And people keep buying it, I think, because it's funny, because Cormac McCarthy isn't funny at all. In this paragraph, we have words like dark and gray and dimming. We have the smelliness of stinking. We have zero light on the horizon. He is letting you know right from the beginning, oh, this is not going to be an HEA ending. And you should watch out for very, very dark stuff in this novel. Look, you don't want your first chapter to mislead the reader. You want to promise them
exactly we're killing all the characters
the whole rest of the novel.
in the first book.
That was helpful.
Or in the first chapter. Except for the main character. Because it's basically... So I think like we are cheating out the way of, you know how they have like a flashback at the beginning of the book? We're kind of cheating that out by having the video, because it's almost like a flashback, but it reminds me a lot of
Welcome to a talks.
I think it's